Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on key national and cross-national surveys by the UK Data Service. I'm Sarah Kingheel, I'm based at the University of Manchester. Okay then, so this is what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to start off with an introduction to the UK Data Service. That's going to be very brief, as the bulk of the webinar is going to be about the survey data that we have available. So I'll tell you about the data we have, about the documentation, and give you a few tips about using the data. We'll also have a demo to show you the website and how to find data and documentation, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So if you do want to ask a question, you can do so at any time by typing into the questions box at the top right of your screen. If you press on the red button with the white arrow, if you can't see where to type, that should open it up. And I'm going to answer any questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so what is the UK Data Service? It's a comprehensive resource. We're funded by the ESRC, and we provide access and support to a wide range of secondary social science data. And as well as providing access to the data, we also provide support to our users and give training and guidance. So the main kinds of data, well, we have 7 main kinds. UK and cross-national surveys are the ones we're going to talk about today. But we also have other kinds of data that you might be interested in. Longitudinal data is the kind of survey data that follows individuals over time. We have international databases like the World Bank Development Indicators, United Nations Statistics. The UK census data, which includes aggregate, boundary, movement and individual level data, just a sample of the individual level data. And we've also got business data and a range of qualitative and mixed methods data sets. And if you want to know more about these kinds of data, there's more information on our website, and we're holding webinars about different data types every week for the next few weeks. Okay, so here's our website. You can search for and access our data from here, as well as find documentation about the data sets and guides and other support materials. You can see the key places to go to get data are Get Data is highlighted and the search box, and I'm going to be showing you all of that in a demo at the end. Okay then, so UK surveys, these are some of the most commonly data that we've got, and they're mostly individual or household level data. They're often produced by organisations such as the Office for National Statistics and NatSen, and these are organisations that have got many years of experience in collecting data, so the data are of very high quality. They also tend to have large sample sizes, and the data are collected so as to be representative of the population that they cover. So the surveys that we call UK surveys are repeated cross-sectional surveys. So this means that they don't follow the same individuals over time, but have a new sample of people or households every time they run. So these kinds of surveys are very useful for looking at population level changes and differences between groups in the population. So for example, between men and women, or between working mothers and non-working mothers. Many of these surveys are repeated every year or in most years, and surveys in the same series do tend to include many of the same questions each time they're run, so that they can be used to look at change over time. So the kind of data we're talking about today is mostly at the individual or household level, and this is called microdata, as opposed to macro data with an A, in which data are aggregated in some way, often by geography. So the screenshot shows what the data that you get look like when you download them into a stats package, and the examples here are in SPSS. And it shows that each row has data from one person in this particular data set, and the variables which are based on the answers to questions each person is asked is in each column. So if you look at the first row, you can see that that was a man, aged 73, and their partner is female, aged 67. Okay, so our surveys cover a range of topics. Most of the surveys are UK only, or for parts of the UK, like just England, say. And the cross-national surveys tend to be cross-European. So an example of topics covered in key surveys are given on the slide. So you can see we have a wide range of topics like employment, health, family finance, crime, attitudes and opinions, and housing. And these are just a few examples. There's many other different topics covered as well. Okay, so now we have a poll about which do you think are collected in UK surveys. So most surveys are conducted face-to-face or by phone, but there are other methods of getting hold of data. So to give you an idea of the variety of data collected, here's the poll. On your screen you'll see various forms of information relating to individuals and households. And our question is, which do you think are collected as part of any UK survey? And you can select more than one option. Yeah, so you can see that most of you think that daily expenditure for 2 weeks is available, surveyor reports on properties. Not many of you think blood samples, and a fair number think number of sexual partners. And obviously this is a bit of a cheat because they all are. In fact, all of that information is available on different surveys within UK surveys that you can download from our website. So the Living Costs and Food Survey collects details of expenditure and food. The English Housing Survey includes a surveyor's report on housing conditions. The Health Survey for England includes a nurse visit to a sample of participants in which they take a blood and saliva test as well as doing height and weight measures. And the National Survey for Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles asks detailed questions about sexual experiences, behaviours and views. Okay. Right, so anyone can access most of this data after registration. And to access the data, you can either download the whole data set from the website, or you can use Nestar to view variables and do basic analyses online. So if you decided to download the data, you'll have the option to download it in different formats, SPSS, Stata or Tab Delimited usually. So you can do your analyses in a stats package like SPSS, Stata, R or any other. You can access many of our surveys, but not all of them, online through a tool called Nestar. And using Nestar, you can browse the information about the survey and do simple analyses and visualizations, and also do simple tables or graphs. They'll be demonstrating that later on, so in the demo, so I won't say any more about that now. So now I'm just going to take you through a few examples of our survey data set so you can see the kind of stuff that we've got. So the British Social Attitude Survey provides an annual measure of attitudinal movement in Britain, and it was designed to complement the other large-scale government surveys that deal largely with facts and behaviour patterns. Its aim is to monitor patterns of continuity and change and examine the relative rates at which social attitudes change over time. So it interviews about 3,000 people in most years since 1983. It has got some core questions which are repeated in most years, so the background and classificatory questions. And it also has modules on a range of social, economic, political and moral issues. And some of these are asked regularly and some of them are asked less often. Okay, so we have another poll here. So an example of the kind of thing you can find out about from the BSA. Here are some results from the BSA 1987 and 2017 about the proportion of people who support traditional gender roles, i.e. that men should earn the money and women should look after the home and family. So you can see we've removed the 2017 figure. So in the poll, your question is, what proportion of people believed that these traditional gender roles should hold in 2017 according to the BSA? Okay, so that's interesting. So most of you thought either 22% or 15%, a few thought 8% and no one thought 3%. Aha, okay, so let's look at the actual results. 8%. In fact, you can actually see these actual figures from the BSA 2017 report. Most data producers, such as in this case NatSen, produce regular reports using their data, and it's worth looking at these reports when you're new to a survey so that you can check that your main headline results are similar to those published by the producers, as this will indicate if you've perhaps made a mistake with using the data when you're not familiar with it in the first instance. Okay, so another survey is the Quarterly Labour Force Survey. This is one of the largest UK surveys and is by far the most downloaded from our website. It covers a wide range of topics around the UK labour market, including employment, unemployment and economic activity, plus a very wide range of related topics such as occupation, training, hours of work, as well as personal characteristics of household members, and this is for people aged 16 and over. This is a survey that's conducted quarterly, and it's been conducted since 1992 as a quarterly survey, and it has approximately 60,000 people interviewed each quarter, so it's very large. And as well as the main survey, there are several subsample and derived data sets also produced, and this also includes a longitudinal series and a Eurostat version of the data set. And another commonly used UK survey is the Health Survey for England. This is a series designed to monitor trends in the nation's health and asks about general health, long-standing illness, as well as many other health-related questions. Core questions are included in every wave, but each year's survey also has a particular focus on a disease or condition or population group, and these are subsequently revisited at appropriate intervals in order to monitor change. And the survey also has, questionnaire-based answers and also physical measurements and the analysis of blood samples, as we've already seen. So this has been run every year since 1991. And the current sample size is about 13,000. So, moving on to an example of a cross-national survey. So this is the final survey example. So the cross-national surveys are similar to the UK surveys I've been talking about, except that they cover not just the UK, but a range of countries. And these are generally, although not always, in Europe. So in these kinds of surveys, the survey methods and questionnaires are designed to be as similar as possible in different countries, so that the data are comparable between different countries. So Eurobarometer is a programme of cross-national comparative social research. It's conducted for the European Commission, and it monitors social and political attitudes. And it's been run since the early 1970s, involves face-to-face interviews with individuals in each of the EU countries. And a new sample of respondents is used each time it's run, so it's similar to the UK surveys I've been talking about. So there are some standard modules that ask about attitudes towards European unification, institutions and policies, etc., as well as things like household demographics. You can find more information about this series on our website or on the Data Archive for the Social Sciences, the German website, GASIS. So the access to the data is actually via the German Data Archive with the GASIS as described. So we have a catalogue page for this data series, but you'd actually have to go to GASIS in order to get the actual data itself. Okay, so a poll. So which issue is the most important to people in the EU according to Eurobarometer 2017? This is a question that was asked people and see what people thought. Okay, so if you thought climate change, many of you thought immigration, and you're right about that. Terrorism, not so many. And unemployment. Okay, so let's have a look what the actual results were. And this is from a report from Eurobarometer 2017. You can see that immigration and terrorism are the key issues facing the EU according to the respondents. They were in fact asked which they think are the two most important issues facing the EU at the particular time. So these data are also broken down in the report by country and also over time, so that you can see how these issues facing the EU vary by country and change over time according to people in this survey. So it's very useful for that. Okay, so moving on to a couple of tips for using survey data. Survey data comes with documentation, which can consist of user guides, questionnaire and other information about how the data were collected and how the data set was created. And you can see these on the website, and you don't need to be registered in order to do that. This is really key to understanding the data. It tells you the questions that are asked, who answered them, and details of the variables. So you have to look at the documentation if you want to understand the data. And I'm going to show you where the documentation is on the website in the demo. A second tip is about survey weights. And this is an issue you're going to come across quite quickly when using survey data. So survey data generally requires that you use variables called survey weights. And when needed, it's important to use these weights to make sure the data represents the population it was designed to reflect. And if you don't use them, it could result in your results not being correct. So weights come with the data and they can be applied easily in stats packages such as SPSS data and R. And all details about any weighting variables is included in the documentation. So if you want to know more about weights, we also have several guides, a guide to what weights are and also how to use weights in Nestar. This is a slide about access conditions. We have different kinds of access to our data. Most of the data you can download after registration from the website, but you may have come across data with other licenses, so it's just useful to be aware of what that means. So the different access arrangements reflect the risk of potential disclosure. So all the data are anonymised, so you're never going to get information about, say, people's name or anything personal like that. But on the other hand, if you had detailed information about, say, a person's job, which sector they work in, the area they live in, as well as their age and gender and other information, there's a potential danger that in some cases you could identify who that person is. So that's the kind of risk that we're talking about when we talk about a disclosure risk. So we have a small amount of open survey data that can be used for teaching, but most of our data for research is the second category, and this is under what's called the end user license. So to get this kind of data, you just register with the UK Data Service, and anybody can register, and then you're free to download these kinds of data from the website. So this kind of data is very unlikely to lead to disclosure, but when you agree to the end user license, you're agreeing to a range of things, including that you're not going to try to identify anybody in the data or share the data with anyone else. So this data is good enough for most research, but if you do need lower levels of geography or sometimes more detailed variables that are not available on the end user license version of the data, sometimes there are other versions, there's a special license or secure access data, and if that's the case, if they are available and you do need the variables of those specifically, then you need to apply for them. However, these data sets are harder to obtain because they're more potentially disclosive, and there's more information about this on our website. So we also have other resource support. We have webinars and workshops, and you can see our event page for that. Guides and video tutorials on various topics, some data sets and some about methods and software. We have case studies, so you can see how others have used the data, and we also have an email help desk. So we offer individual support by email. The kind of support that we offer is in relation to the service that we offer. So we support you if you're struggling with registration or accessing the data. Also, if you were to, say, download some data and you're struggling to understand it, you've looked at the documentation but there's still something you don't understand, these are the sorts of things that we can help with the help desk. The kind of thing that we don't help with the help desk is analysis. So if you're not sure how to analyse the data, then it wouldn't be us that you'd be getting in contact with. Okay then, so now I'm going to do a website demo in which I'm going to talk about how to find survey data, the catalogue pages, getting information about the survey, how to view and do simple analyses, and how to download the data. Okie dokie, so let's go to the... Okay, so in order to find the data set, if I go to Google, but in order to find our website, I should say, go to Google, type in UKDS, and UK Data Service come up. Okay, and this is what our website looks like, and this is the various information lower down the page. You can see some of our news, events, and Twitter. Okay, so this is set up so that the key menus are here, About Us, which gives some general information about the UK Data Service. The key ones I suggest you're most likely to look at are likely to be Get Data, and possibly Use Data, which enables you to look at guides and things like that. We also have information about how to manage your own data if you've collected it, and also if you've collected data and you want to deposit it with us, then there's information in here, in deposit data, all about that. And we also have information about various news and our events. Okay, so here we are. If we look back at what's in use data, I'll just quickly show you that we have guides, video tutorials, information about data in use, and also about how to cite our data. A little bit about Secure Labs, so this is if you're using a secure version of some of the data, and also information about teaching with data, some very student resources, online interactive data skills modules as well. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the 3 key ways of getting hold of data. There's 3 key ways, I would say. You can use the Get Data menu here, and either go to Key Data, which is a list of our key data sets, but not all of them, and Data by Theme, which is pretty self-explanatory, and I'll show you both of those. Another way of doing it is to just type something into our search box, so I'll show you that first. So I'll type in crime, and right, okay, so this has taken us to our catalogue search results. So you can see the results are here, okay, and at the moment it's set up so it shows 10 per page, but I could have set it up so it showed a lot more. I could have also sorted it differently by the most recently released. At the moment it just defaults to relevance. You can also change the dates. I'm not really sure why it's 1753, but anyway, if you're only interested, say, in data from 2000 onwards, you could just refine that, and then you'd only get the more recent data. You can also choose by topic. So I could choose to limit it by topic. I could also choose by data type, so for example UK survey data. Access, safeguarded, this means the special license and the end user license data. Controlled is the secure, and open is the freely open data. And country as well, you can limit it by particular countries. Incidentally, you might want to consider, if you want information about, say, England, to also select United Kingdom and England, Wales, because they also cover England, obviously. Okie dokie. So, what I'll show you also while I'm at it is the variable and question bank. So up here is a link to it. And what this allows you to do is to search for specific variables within survey data. So if I, for example, am interested in bus travel, and I want to know whether people travel by bus, and I want to know which surveys are likely to include that information, I type in bus, click go, and you can see it provides a list of specific variables and the questions that were associated. As long as they have the word bus in them, they will appear. And you can also see which surveys they were included in. And you can also do a number of different filters to get more precise results. So I'll go back to the main catalogue search. Okay, oops, it's not taking me there. There we go, let's go back again. Oh yes, there we are. Right, so the main catalogue search. So it's still got up that it says crime, so we've still got the crime surveys, and I've taken you through this page. So let's look at particular surveys. So let's go for the one that's just come top, so just a random survey. So this is the Scottish Crime Survey 2000. Oh, incidentally, before I move on, another thing that's useful here is the tabs. Got to mention, it defaults to the studies tab, so these are all individual studies, but you could have looked for series, so that is ones that have crime mentioned in them in the title or in the abstract, and you can see that that immediately brings up the key surveys, that the key survey series that include information of various kinds about crime. So this could be very useful if you want an overview of the kinds of surveys that actually have the word that you've searched for in there. So if I just go back to studies, and then I will go to the Scottish Crime Survey. So this takes me to the catalogue page for the Scottish Crime Survey 2000, and all the survey pages basically have the same format. So you can see it's got the name at the top, and it's got some various details, alternative titles, what series it's part of, if it is part of one, and it says who created the data effectively, so who the data collector were and the sponsor, and it covers the topics, and there's best research on keywords. But I think the key thing that you want to look at is the abstract. So if you're new to any data set, I would start off by looking at the abstract, because the abstract really gives an overview, and the kinds of useful stuff that it will tell you is what the objective of the people who created the data was, what kind of information they were trying to obtain, why they collected it. It often tells you the origins of it, so sometimes they change the name of the survey series. Often it's because they've decided to change something else about the survey series as well, but it's very useful to be aware that there are related survey series. And it's in this abstract that you will actually see a lot of that kind of information provided. And there's more information. So look, you see background and history. Okay, so this will give you some other ideas about other data sets that might be of interest to you potentially. Okay, it explains what's in the special license version of this particular data set. Not all data sets have a special license or secure version, but where they do, it'll often be mentioned in the abstract, and it'll explain what's in the different versions of the data, which can be quite useful. And also the main topics, and this is quite useful as well, because it's just a summary. It's not normally as long as this, they're normally a bit shorter than that. Okay, coverage and methodology is also really useful. So that's a summary of all the kinds of stuff you're likely to want to know about a data set. So data field work, when it covered, the countries, if it covered, spatial units, what the observation level was, etc. And the population, you can see the sample size as well, all sorts of information. All of this is from the people who produced the data in the first place, so it should be accurate. And then you can have the information also at the bottom of that first tab, all about citation and copyright. And so we expect that you would cite any data that you use from us. Okay, so another key tab is the documentation. So this is all provided by the data producers, and this is the documentation that I was referring to earlier, that I said you need to have read this really to understand your data. So you'll see sometimes when you look that there's 20 or 30 bits of documentation, sometimes there's just 2 or 3, like in this case. So in this case we'll go and look at the user guide. So if you just click on PDF, it takes me straight there, and I can just scroll through this, or I can search for something like, say, weights, and hopefully it's got that information in it, and then it will take me to all the information about what the weights were that they created and how they were created and what the variable names are and things like that. So that's another way that you can use that. Okay, it should also have all the information as well about the origin of the survey and how it was created. The resources tab has just various other studies that might be related, that might be of interest. And the access, so this is how you access the data. Now, if you were already logged in, then you would see a button here at the bottom that says something like Access Now. But because I'm not logged in, I haven't got that. So it says you must be a registered user or logged in to access this study. So what I'm going to do is log in. So I'll go to the top to do that. Click Login, Register. Now, this computer knows me. It knows that I previously selected the University of Manchester. So I could have just typed that in there, but I'm going to click here. And because I'm based at a university, this should take me, oh, no, I think this is remembering from the previous occasion that I have done this. This is not what I was expecting to see. This is the problem with live demos. Okay, right. Okay, well, it appears it's logged me in. I'm not quite sure why it did that. I think it must be because it remembered from when I tested this morning. So essentially what would have happened is that it would have taken me to the University of Manchester login page. Then I would put in my username, my University of Manchester password, and then it would have hopefully brought me back to this page, or if not, I could have pressed the back button a couple of times to get back to the Scottish Crime Survey. So once you're logged in, then you can see that it gives you the option to add to this account. If you are not based at a university, you may be thinking, well, what would happen about me and logging in? Well, there's information on the website about registration and logging in if you're not based at a university. But basically, you're going to be given a username and password that's for via the UK Data Archive. So you still can access it in a similar sort of way to how I demonstrated it. It's just not going to be via a university. Okay then, so say I want to get hold of these data. I press Add to Account. And it thinks about it for a moment. And then up at the top here, it says My Account. And if I go to My Account, I can see I've got a number of different projects, and I've got one data set waiting assignment, which is this one. So if I click on Data, okay, so here we are, Scottish Crime Survey 2000, and I click on this, and then I have to add it to a project. So this is just standard practice. You'll have to do the same thing. You would create a new project, say. If you've not created any projects before, you would just give your project a title and explain what you actually want to be able to use the data for. This is particularly useful for the people who deposit their data with us, because then they can actually see what their data have been used for, and they can use that information to get more funding in order to do future surveys. So it's quite helpful if you can explain properly what you intend to do with the data. Okay then, I'm going to add it to an existing project because I have ones already set up, so I'll just imagine I was using it for a help desk query. Add it to my project. So these are ones I downloaded before, but this is the one I'm interested in here. So I could just click on it, download selected. Okay, there we go. And now you can see that you just click on download, or you could click on that and click download selected. Okay, and what we have here are the SPSS version, states version and tab versions, and these contain all the same information, so it doesn't matter which of these you download, they should all be identical. Okay, so that's how to get hold of the data. So I'm going to just go back to the home page and talk to you about the other ways of getting hold of data. So I've covered searching. If you're not familiar with the data, the range of data we've got, but you have a particular theme in mind, it might be useful to look at this. So get data, data by theme. Okie dokie. And here we have a number of different themes you can see at the side here. So ageing, crime, economics, education, etc. So if you're interested in looking for data on these particular topics, what the theme pages do is cover all the different kinds of data. For example, if I click on ageing, you can see you're given a list of what we at the service thought were the key data sets available in that particular topic area. This doesn't just cover UK or cross-national surveys, it actually covers all the different kinds of data sets. But we'll only have selected 2 or 3, so it certainly doesn't cover all the data, but it could be a really good place to start. And incidentally, it's in alphabetical order, not necessarily in order of usefulness or use or anything like that. You can also go to the data catalogue search, so that would enable you to do what I already did, but search for age-related studies. And there's various tips about searching. And you can see about looking at variables on ageing, which I already showed you. There's a tab for research, which just shows you how other people have used it, and resources, which is again linked to some of our resources, but also external resources around ageing, which could be useful. Okay. So another key place to go to get data is to go via Get Data and Key Data. So if I click on that, and this is broken down by all the different types of data. So you can see it defaults to UK surveys. If I were to click on any of these others, I'd see a list of the key surveys, or key data sources rather, that are within those particular kinds of data sets. So if I just look at UK surveys, you can see this is a list of the key data sets. So these are the most commonly used ones, and the ones that we think are most likely to be used, and they're in alphabetical order. And you can search this page, of course, Control F to search for, say, health, and then you could see health, any health survey that comes up where health is mentioned, for example. Okay, this is quite a useful way, I think, of starting out if you're not familiar at all with the data. Okay, so if I look at one of these, so say British Social Attitudes Survey, that takes me through to a series page, which is slightly different from the catalogue page that you've already seen. So this abstract here is really, really brief overview of the whole of the BSA survey series. And access, if I click on any of these, that takes me through to the catalogue page for the BSA for any of the years, and you can see all the different years where the BSA was available. Okay, there's also frequently asked questions, and there's also some resources. So now I'm going to take you through to the BSA page. I could click here to go straight to Nestar, but I'm going to take you through to the catalogue page quickly. And here you'll see it's exactly the same as the crime survey page that we looked at earlier. Okay, so you've got exactly the same information here, the documentation, there's all these different user guides and resources. Here are a number of different studies that are related, and there's also some case studies. And then access. Okay, now because I'm already logged in, I could just add this to my account and then go up to my account as I did before and then add it to the appropriate project. But we've already done that, so I'm going to show you briefly Nestar instead. So if I click on Access Online instead, that takes me through to Nestar. So what you see in the left-hand pane is a list of all the surveys that are included in Nestar. So it doesn't cover every single survey, but it's just some of the major surveys and ones that are perhaps slightly less complicated as well. Some of the more complex ones have not been included in Nestar. There are some ones that are unrestricted access if you look at the very bottom, so these are open ones. And there's also at the very bottom teaching data sets. So if anybody teaches, there might be some teaching data sets available that would be of interest. So because I went in through the BSA, in the left-hand pane, it's already opened on the British Social Attitudes Survey 2016. The right-hand pane is giving just general background information, which is the same as what you'd have seen if you were to look on the catalogue page. And if I click on variable description, what makes this useful is I could say I'm interested in newspaper readership. If I click on that one, and then I click on the next. So this is, do you normally read any daily morning newspaper at least 3 times a week? So this is a specific variable in the BSA 2016. You can see that it's called ReadPap. The literal question is included as well. And you can see all the different values, so how it's coded. And you can see the unweighted frequencies as well here and percentages, which is quite nice, so that you can get an idea without having to download the data of whether this might be of interest to you, whether these numbers are large enough to say or be, look of interest. Also, it says the number of valid cases and number of missing cases and the universe. So this was asked of everybody. However, if we go to the next question, which you can see is a follow-up to the question before, now the universe says if yes at the question before, ReadPap, which is the one we just looked at. Okay, and it's got some missing cases, which are obviously the people who said that they don't normally read newspaper. And here you can see all the different newspapers that people said that they read. Okay, so this is as far as this will take you if you're not logged in. So you can use Nestar without being logged in up to this point, and so it's kind of quite useful, I think, if you're teaching really basic surveys to say undergraduates or someone who's not familiar, and you don't want to start downloading SPSS and going down that route, but you want them to be exploring coding maybe, or thinking about what kind of variables are in data sets. So this could be useful for that. There are more things that you can do with this. I should be able to show you some of these because I'm logged in. So I think if I want to do a tabulation, let's do that. I can add to row. Oh, no. Yes. Oh, let's see if it's going to let me. Oh, yes, it will. Great, because I'm already logged in. That's perfect. And if I wanted to, I could add another variable. If I could find gender, I'm not sure where that is. I'd have to have a search for it. So I could do a crosstab, say, in this. If you click on analysis, it does actually allow you to do correlations and regressions. Personally, I wouldn't use Nestar for that really. I would only use it for descriptive statistics. I would be downloading the data and doing it in a proper stats package. But there's a lot of other icons over here. Oh dear. And they allow you to show things by graphs. You could do a more interesting graph than that. It allows you to weight the data. It allows you to subset data, so you can actually use Nestar to download subsets of the data. On the whole, that probably isn't necessary, but if you really did need to just download a subset, maybe because you're using a very old computer, you could do it via Nestar. You can also compute things, and you can download the data as well.